Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Give us a few minutes. We'll start the webinar right away. It's really interesting to see how many of you are joining us on a Saturday evening. I know all the Delhi people have nothing, it's raining and it's really terrible. Is it the same in Goa, Nikhil?
Well, it just started raining now that you've brought it up. It wasn't raining until now the whole day, but you seem to have jinxed it, Seema. So it's just started raining. So I also have nothing better to do than to sit here.
I think everyone has lots of interesting, and I know you've got a lot of interesting things to share with them. So I'm not sure where people are joining us from. It would be great if you tell us in the chat box where you're joining us from. And as always, this is an interactive webinar. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have in the Q&A, and Nikhil and I will pick it up as we go along. Anyone likely to tell us where they are joining us from? Okay. We have Sarath from Bangalore.
If this is a group of product manager enthusiasts, then no surprise if I see Bangalore and Hyderabad topping the list.
It's only Bangalore and Hyderabad.
Oh,
we have someone from Gujarat. Okay, interesting. We have Delhi also, Nikhil. Okay, I think we are good to go. Let's begin. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is a series that we conduct as part of the Accelerated Management Program at the Harappa School of Leadership. Product is a very important track for us, and Nikhil in his previous avatar was the Chief Operating Officer of Harappa, and now he's entrepreneur in residence at the Toddle app. So actually he's gone to develop a product from start to finish. And I don't think there can be anyone better who can talk to us about really how do you, what is the A to Z of product management. So Nikhil, over to you. Would you like to tell us a little about yourself and what you're doing right now? And then should we dive in straight?
Sure. Thanks, Seema. Thanks for having me here, and excited to spend this Saturday evening with product manager sort of enthusiasts. So yeah, I've been working in education for the last 15 years, pretty much all my life. I've been lucky to have found my purpose earlier on. It was in fact because of my 4-year engineering degree that I realized, oh my God, like this is not how education needs to be, and that's what propelled me into education. So I've had stints across a number of edtech companies. I've also been an entrepreneur in education and worked, across different roles: sales, marketing, product, operations. So have been fortunate enough to get that sort of experience. Right now, I've gone back to being an entrepreneur, although this is within a larger, startup. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at a company called Toddle, that's based out of Bangalore, and we're building out a completely new virtual school for high school students across the world on how to think about careers and career design. So that's what I'm currently doing.
So let's start right off. So how does it, you're actually said you're developing a product from start to finish. So really, what does it include, Nikhil? I mean, at your stage and this thing, how does it work to become a product, to manage, begin a product from scratch and then hopefully see it till the very end? What does it really entail?
Right. So I think, I think a product manager sort of literally sits at an intersection of a lot of things, right? I think the first big area that a product manager needs to kind of think about, or a product person needs to think about, is really the customer and the user, right? And I think that's, at least in my current role, I'm spending a lot of time trying to understand the market, trying to understand users, and almost being an advocate of users within the company, right? So I think that's one sort of aspect about being a product manager, especially in the earlier stages of product management. I think the second sort of piece of intersection is really about a sense of technology, right? Like understanding, okay, because being a cross-functional role, you almost have to work with engineers, designers, and other people within the company. So being able to have some sort of a handle on what technology is all about, and thinking about that in terms of a solution, is the second piece. And so in my current role, although we're not fully using technology, we haven't yet started building out the product, but at least which are the tools we need to put together, and understanding of that, I think, is important. And obviously the third is really about the business, right? Like from a company standpoint, how are we thinking about this from a commercial standpoint? How are we going to make money? What does it mean from a business standpoint, right? So I think those are three sort of very big intersections for anybody thinking about product, and even more so at the earlier stage, which is when you're really thinking about things like product market fit and so on and so forth. But all of this kind of evolves as you grow in this function, leading bigger, more mature products.
So are you saying that right off the bat, most product managers will not do what you do?
Well, sorry, could you repeat that?
As in, like, what you've described, is this the general role of a product manager, or it evolves as they move from one product to the other, or depending on this life cycle of the product, they will do different things?
Right. So the product manager's role evolves, right? Like, it's actually a very interesting role, because it's probably one of the few roles that actually has been literally in lockstep with the way technology has been moving, right? So what a product manager was in 1950, when it was literally first invented as a role in Hewlett Packard, just for you guys, in case you're interested, that was the first company that had the product manager designation, to what a product manager is today, to what it will be, going forward, is very different, right? So first, I think, is the fact that this role is almost, codependent with the way technology is evolving, right? And so it's not really any fixed role like a sales role or a, design role, or even a, an engineering role, right? I think so that's one. The second is, no two product managers actually do the same thing, right? If you actually go and Google the product manager role, you can actually get very confused, like, because what a product manager does in a company like Spotify, to what a senior product manager does in a company like Dropbox, to what an associate product manager does in a company like Netflix, are all very, very different things, right? So it can be a little bit confusing. But broadly, yeah, essentially there are like 4 or 5 different things that product managers do, and that's really an evolution of their role, right? So one is really what they call an innovation product manager, which is somebody who thinks about 0 to 1 products, where the focus is really on something called product market fit, which is how do you create a product that appeals to a certain minimum set of users for the company to back it for the future, right? So that's one. The second is what we call, a core product manager. And, a core product manager's role is to pick up an existing working product and work on the feature sets and really focus on one customer group and solve, problems for that customer group. So that's called a core sort of PM. The third kind of PM is literally what we call a platform PM, right? And essentially, this product manager's role is on scaling the product. So this is a little bit of an internal role to say, okay, when a product is actually working, then how do you scale this, across thousands and millions of, billions of users, right? And, being able to internally interface with technology becomes critical. So that's the third kind of role. And the fourth, finally, is really a growth product manager, right? Which is, okay, how do you think about a more commercial side of actually acquiring users? How do customers pay? What is the cost of acquisition? How do you monetize? How do you retain users? And so on and so forth. So broadly, these are 4 different kinds of product managers. And, what this could mean in different companies are different things. And obviously, this is going to significantly evolve with stuff like AI and data really taking the center stage with where we are in technology. But yeah.
So are you saying that there is no one definition of what a product manager really is, and it depends from industry to industry, and even within industries, it will depend from company to company, and it changes?
Yeah, so I think while there are these 4 different types of product managers, and you can think of these as verticals, there are a certain set of commonalities across them, right? And that's really the horizontal which connects all of them. And that goes back to how we started, which is, irrespective of which type of product manager you are, you still have to sit at this intersection of thinking about your customer and your users, and your users or customers would change in each of these 4 different types of PM roles but the ability to think from a customer standpoint or the user standpoint remains constant. The second is, like I said, thinking from a technology standpoint, right? And the third is thinking from a commercial business standpoint, right? So a product manager kind of sits at the intersection of these three, but what these three things mean for a growth PM, for a platform PM, for a product, for a innovation PM, and for a core PM could be very different.
So we've already got a question, and I think maybe we should wait on it, but let me know what you think. This is from Rohit, and he wants to know what is the future of product management, not perhaps just a product manager, but the entire business of product management in the age of AI. Any thoughts on that?
Lots of thoughts, and I'm not sure if we have enough time to cover that, and we should definitely think of a separate session on that. But yeah, I think, wow, I think it is one of the most exciting times to actually be a product manager, right? And if you actually look at some of the statistics on the most critical skills that companies need today, whether you look at just LinkedIn learning reports, or you look at a company called MC Burning Glass, which comes up with annual reports on job roles, the product management function is one of the most in demand sort of roles going forward, right? So I think that's just from a data standpoint, right? I think the second is, like I said, the product management function almost has been in lockstep with technology. So today's PM roles, which is the four things that I spoke about, are almost because of what happened in the early 2000s, right? Which is when Google was being formed, Microsoft was coming into its sense of self. So these roles represent a sense of where today's technology has matured into, things like social media, mobile phones, and so on, right? Now, with AI really coming in as a new frontier of technology, what these dimensions of product managers could look like in the future could be very different, right? So you could probably have like an AI ethical product manager, for example, right? Because ethics is becoming such a big thing about AI because of how you train the models and so on, right? You could almost have a very data focused product manager, right? So I think what PMs will end up doing and how they will be classified, let's say 5 or even 8 years down the line, is all going to be a function of how AI sort of takes shape. So that I think is the second piece. I think the last piece, which is a little bit philosophical, which is that we're at a very interesting time in history, and my love for learning has almost got me interested in history, especially the history of technology. But today, the world today is a little bit like how it was 200 years ago, when the first industrial revolution was coming into play, right? There was the steam engine coming in, electricity was probably coming in, right? And why it's critical and why it's important is because how people think about directing these technologies becomes very, very important, right? So how people 200 years ago thought about directing those technologies for the benefits of human beings, right? And there are lots of debates about whether all those technologies have really helped humankind. Of course, we're better off today than 200 years ago, but have those technologies really benefited everybody equally? And I think in the context of AI, the product manager is going to be very critical, because they're the ones really directing the use of this technology towards users, right? So their decision making, their judgment is going to become very, very critical for how this technology plays out. So I'm very bullish about this going forward.
So does that bring me back to a question that many people ask on and off, that if you want to become a product manager, do you necessarily need to have an engineering or a technical sort of background? How and going forward, if everything is going to be related to AI and decisions are going to be based on how technology evolves, then is it becoming more and more critical for product managers to come or become one with some sort of background in engineering?
Yeah. So I come from a background where because this has been my personal experience, is that you can technically break into any field if you fundamentally believe in something or passionately believe in something, right? So I don't come from a belief that you need to have a grounded sort of a grounded background in product management to break into it, right? Technically, there isn't even a product management degree think about it, right? You have an MBA, you have like bachelors of programs, masters of finance, masters of marketing. You don't really have, I mean, maybe 1 or 2 masters of product management. So you don't really have a degree, right? So I don't think you need like prior sort of background, but there are some sort of skills that are critical, right? And for you to break into this role or accelerate your growth in this role, being able to showcase or learn these skills and demonstrate them with some experience becomes critical. Even if you don't have it, even if you demonstrate these skills in an unrelated field, they can be transferred to product, right? So for example, in my case, I've learned much more about product management because I was a teacher. Having taught children and being customer centric towards parents and being innovative in terms of designing kits for kids taught me the skills to think about digital products. Not like I had a background in digital products, right? So there are a set of, about 12 skills that are critical, and, happy to discuss some of those that I think people would need to actually break in and grow, but you don't need to have a digital product background to break into that.
So what you're really saying is that you don't necessarily have to be an engineer, or you don't necessarily have to have a background in engineering to be able to sort of break into a product management role.
No, not at all.
There are other skills.
Yeah, there are a bunch of skills that engineering is a degree, right? Like I could not even have a degree, or I could come from a liberal arts background. As long as I have those skills and I can demonstrate those skills to employers, that becomes much more critical, right? And basically those skills are, a bunch of things, right? Like the ability to work with data, right? It becomes an important skill, even more so in the age of AI. And you could have worked with data without having worked with a digital product, right? You could have done it in so many other. You could work with on supply chain supply chain problems, and you could have worked with Excel sheets on supply chain to understand to have a sound understanding of data and bring those skills out, right? You could have a background in finance and a strong understanding of data there to bring it out, right? So data becomes, I think, one set of skills that are important. How to voice how to think about your customer, right? I think, like I spoke about, one of the big things a product manager does is be a champion of the customer, right? So having this ability to understand what the customer needs and wants, so having this ability to spend time with the customer becomes critical, right? So that's another skill set which actually most people don't have. Everybody has data.
Essentially research, ability to research, or ability to study your key stakeholder, which is your consumer, right?
Yeah. Research, being able to spend time with your customer, synthesizing what their needs are, having a structured approach to understanding what the customer needs is a skill of its own, and that is important, right? And you could do that in not necessarily in a digital background. You could do it in so many other sort of disciplines, right? I think the third set of skills are definitely influencing people, right? Because it's such a cross-functional role. That a lot of your time is having spent working with engineers, working with designers, working with the business team, working with the marketing team, that you have to have strong, influence skills, right? And again, those you could have been a college president and have those skills and still break into.
So are you telling us that a product manager needs to be a politician as well in disguise to get along with everybody?
Yeah, I don't know, like. Depends on how you think about politics at what point in time, but I'm not necessarily a politician, but the ability to manage people and their expectations and deliver on outcomes, right? Now you can choose from a politics standpoint how much of that is true, but yeah, at least balancing outcomes and people become critical in that role, right? So I think that's the third sort of piece. And I think,
does an MBA teach you to do that? Does an MBA help you to sort of develop that skill of influencing people, of bringing different stakeholders to sort of become better collaborators? Is that something that necessarily a program can teach you?
Like I think you can learn those skills based on how the program is structured as well. So like, for example, in my MBA, I learned a lot of those skills because I volunteered for lots of activities. And so I had to literally kind of spend time working on organizing activities, organizing people, and literally learning my leadership skills because of those, right? So that helped. I think the way the assignments were structured really helped, because I had to, almost work with a team of 4 people and figure out a way to come to consensus when it came to deciding what an assignment should be, what the, output of the assignment should be, etc. Right? So the way the curriculum is structured and the experiences it offers certainly helps in building some of these skills for sure.
Okay, let's take a question now. This is Asmat. Says, any tips or helpful resources for a PM's early stage, PMF startups, where the PM is setting up the function and product 0 to 1. Conventional PM resources and frameworks don't usually align well in this context. I think this would be an interesting one for you to answer, because this is what you're really doing right now, right?
Yeah, so there are frameworks, and I think the way to think about searching for these frameworks is looking specifically for product market fit frameworks, because that is the part of the PM journey that you are on, right? And it's not necessarily an early stage journey. Like, I have spent 15 years, I'm still working as a PMF, right? So which is creating a new product, right? It's more a skill than a time in the journey. But searching for product management fit or PMF resources is probably the right way to think about this, as opposed to product management resources. Because if you search for that category, then yes, you get a lot of stuff that need not be related to the 0 to 1 PMF segment, right? But yeah, there are lots of places, right? Like there's Product School, which exists as a place where you could get those. Reforge is a fantastic place where you can get resources on this. So there's no shortage of thinking. And these are templates, right? The good thing is that today people are so open to sharing information that they've actually got templates where they've defined how do you decide whether a product has achieved product market fit, right? What are the number of people? What is the value proposition? What is the business model? There are like 6-7 dimensions on which you can benchmark success. And those are existing templates available that you can very easily repurpose.
I think Ashish mentions Diplomate also. Is that a resource? I'm sorry, I'm not aware of it. It's in the chat.
Yeah, I see that. I haven't heard of that, but maybe it is a resource, and maybe Ashish can expand on that. But yeah.
Okay. So as we are talking about this, the journey of a product management, really, where are we with this? Is it, on and off you hear that, hey, maybe this profession is not, especially with AI and other things. And I remember you showed me a very interesting graph to say, listen, this is where product management really is, and there's a long way to go, and AI aren't killing product management anytime soon. Anything there you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so let me just share with you a graph, right? And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Let me know if you can see my screen, Seema. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So just take a look at this, right? So this is from a person called Tim Urban. He writes a blog called Wait But Why. And basically, he talks about where we are as a society and as human beings in the context of time, right? And you can see we're at this time where things are massively accelerating, like massively accelerating, right? There's an acceleration of technology, and there's an acceleration of consumer preferences, right? Before, if you talk to Hindustan Unilever, right, one of probably the biggest sort of company which thinks about preferences and consumer insights and so on, and you ask them, listen, you ask some of these executives like 15 years ago, how much time did it take for consumer preferences to change? And they'd probably say, yeah, like for 5 years, 6 years. Today, every 2 years, every year, consumer preferences are changing, right? Because there's access to so much information. The user's preferences are changing. At the same time, technology is changing or accelerating. So the need for that person in between, which is the product manager, becomes even more critical, right? Because that person needs to know how the technology is evolving and how preferences of users are changing to be able to direct the product and the technology in the right direction, right? So in the context of AI and other things, I think, like I said, it's a very exciting time to be here. And just to maybe give you some sense of what this means, right? Like, let me give you what this means, right? Like, if you had a time machine, okay, and let me maybe just stop sharing my screen. So if you guys had a time machine with you, you had a time machine, right? And this is what this blog talks about. If you went back in time, okay, and you picked up somebody in the year 1750, think about the year 1750, right? No electricity, everything is blacked out, right? There were no cars, everybody was like on horses. You can just imagine what the world was like, right? In 1750, which was how many years ago? About 250 years ago, right? 270 years ago. If you picked up somebody from 1750 and brought them to today's day and age, that person would have died with shock, right? Saying that, what is this, what the world looks like? Like you can speak to people across the world in like a second. There's internet, there's like autonomous vehicles going around. That person would have literally died with shock. So it would have taken you 250 years for that person to literally die with shock, right? So just keep that in your mind. The time to shock is 250 years, okay? Now, if you go back to 1750 and you apply the time machine then, right? And you pick up somebody 250 years earlier in the year 1500, in the year 1400 or whatever, right? And you bring a person to 1750. Do you think that person is going to die with shock? Unlikely, because the world hadn't changed so much between 1400 and 1750, right? Probably some churches, etc., had gotten made, some temples had gotten made. There was architectural, revolution. Science had gotten better with the Renaissance, stuff like that, but not earth-shattering like it has in 250 years, right? So the question then becomes, how much time would you have to have gone back from 1750 to actually get someone to die with shock? The answer to that is 12,000 years, right? So if you had picked up somebody from 12,000 years ago when agriculture was invented and brought that person to 1750, that person would have died with shock. So just think about it, right? That the amount of change that's taken place from 12,000 years to 1750, which is like, whatever, like 10,000 years, is the time it's taken for us to get there in 250 years, right? So where I'm going with this is that as we go forward in today's society, it's going to maybe take 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, even shorter amounts of time for the world to completely change. And so the need for that person to really be at the center of thinking about directing technology and products becomes even more critical.
That sounds like the product management is a very, very complex role. You not only have to sort of manage things while you're at it, you also have to constantly upgrade yourself. Is that a fair assumption?
It's a very fair assumption because the nature of problems have also evolved, right? Like, again, if you go back to 1750 or 1950 or 1900s, the way you'd solve a problem at that time was thinking in one discipline or maximum two disciplines, right? If you are working on some manufacturing technology, you'd probably figure out how machines work. You'd use some technology, there's some understanding there, some engineering knowledge, and you'd be able to actually fix problems, right? Today, because of the access of information and because of the nature of problems, like today's problems are actually different. Like the problems 50 years ago was, okay, how do we give people electricity? How do we give people, access to, drinking water, right? The things we take for granted today, right? Today's problems are much more complex. Climate change is a massive problem, right? Like, how do you think about energy as a massive problem? So problems have become complex. And with consumer preferences changing so quickly, the product manager needs to have a sense of multiple disciplines to be able to solve problems in a more effective way, right? I'll give you my example, right? If I had to solve an education problem 50 years ago, I would probably only think about the education function, right? How teaching worked, right? I'd think about that as a domain and solve a problem. Today, if I have to solve an education problem, I need to think about education as a domain. I need to think about behavior science as a domain. I need to think about anthropology, which is culture, as a domain. I need to think about the social sciences as a domain. I need to think about technology as a domain, right? So I don't need to be an expert in all this, right? And that's the product manager is almost like you're like a jack of all trades, but I need to have the ability to dip into these topics and understand how they work to effectively solve problems. And so multidisciplinary perspective becomes critical. So is it complex? I don't think so, right? Like, I think one of the biggest joys of being a product manager is you get to learn so much, which is the other function that gives you the opportunity of learning across disciplines, right? I don't think there's any other function that gives you that. So to me, it's an opportunity to actually become much more curious and get a chance to learn all of this and so apply it then in the work you do.
Then essentially you're saying that if someone wants to take up product management or wants to stay in the field, then one of the skills or qualities they need to have is someone who's ready to be curious, someone who's ready to pick up many things as they go along. So if you're the kind who likes to do a steady job or a steady kind of work, then would you say that product management is not for you?
Well, no, I don't think that's what I meant. I think there's value in being steady. And you go to the principle of compounding, which is doing 1% every day has much more value, over the entire year as compared to trying to have these bursts in the dark with, trying to have large goals and so on. So I'm a big believer of actually consistency, but marrying that sense of consistency with this multidisciplinary approach, I think, is critical. You can't just say I'll have skills on data and that's enough, I'll be a product manager. That may not work, right? Or I'll say I can only advocate for the users and that's enough, I'll be a product manager. That may not work, right? So this need for having a slightly more multidisciplinary sort of perspective and putting that to use as a characteristic with discipline, I think, is critical.
But can't you decide, you mentioned there are 4 kinds of product managers, right? So can't you decide that, hey, I only want to remain this kind of product manager and therefore I will only stick to this? I think you again showed me something where you were telling me the difference between the two, but is there a little bit more you can elaborate on that? And meanwhile, guys, if there are questions, please keep them coming. I only know so much about product management, so it's really for you to ask and understand how Nikhil is moving through various phases of product management and what he has learned.
Yeah, so I think before you figure out like which kind of product manager you are or what product management function you work on, I think first you need to have a love for the product, right? There was a CB Insights, which is a very popular sort of, insights company, did a research on why companies fail, right? Why startups fail, why companies fail. The second biggest reason or the third biggest reason why companies fail is because they create a product that nobody wants, right? The first reason is obviously you run out of money. But the second or third biggest reason is that companies make a product that nobody really wants. So first, I think it's believing in the product that you're trying to create, right? Which goes back to
I may believe in the product, but what if nobody wants it? Then is it just enough for me to have the belief, or do we need to have?
No, so I'm saying, so it starts with that belief, right? You first, irrespective if you're a growth product manager or a platform product manager or a 0 to 1 product manager or a core product manager, forget about those. First, do you believe that that a product needs to exist for that problem, right? For whatever problem you're working on, right? You first need to have that belief, right? If you don't have that belief, it doesn't matter which function you work in, you will always kind of, always be in the mode of figuring it out, right? So if you figure that belief out, then it's a little bit of, okay, what really interests you, right? Like I said, these are such different phases, right? Like a growth product manager is focused more on saying, I really like this product and now I want to scale this. Like, I want to get this to as many people as possible. That is the problem that they are solving. But of course, if they believe in what they're doing, right? A platform product manager is more technical in nature to say, okay, I really believe in this product, but now I need to work with the engineers in a more deliberate way to fix the technology such that it's scalable, right? Like you think about WhatsApp, right? Like such a easily scalable system. A lot of those product managers are actually platform product managers. There's not much feature changes that actually take place in a product like WhatsApp, right? A 0 to 1 product manager again is where if you believe in there being a product, it's almost like giving birth to a product there. You pick up that sort of a thing, right? So it also depends on what your interests are. But I would say that for you to work on the platform side, there's definitely a much larger need on the tech skills that you will need, because the function there is largely about working in solving for the tech scalability. If you're interested in the growth PM side, then your commercial side or your business side needs to be a lot more sort of enunciated. If you're focused on the 0 to 1 side, then there it's your innovation quotient or your advocacy for customers, for example, become much more important, right? So depends on your own sort of interest and belief in the product. You then get a chance to, figure out which are the 3 segments you work on.
Okay, so this is a common issue and a common problem, and I think I started by asking you whether you need an engineering background or a computer science background to become a product manager. And here is someone, I don't have their name. They say that they come from a humanities background, a BA, and currently work in an edtech company in a content role. And they say that most of the jobs on LinkedIn for PM or APM role are where companies ask for a bachelor in engineering, computer science, and they even want an MBA. So he or she says it's a very limited, so it's very difficult for them to find a PM role with the current background that they have. So how does one even enter the field? They mentioned that they have done a few product management courses from Udemy.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a much larger sort of question about this need to have a degree, right? And just so you know, I had an MBA from a premier B school in India, and I actually walked out of that MBA college without a job. And honestly, it hasn't really affected so much of my career, right? Where I'm going with this is that why do employers ask for a degree? Think about it, right? They ask for a degree because it's a signal, right? It's a signal to say that this person has these skills or these abilities. May not even have the skills. No, I mean, degrees maybe give you some skills, but there are other ways to acquire skills, right? So the degree is just a signal for the employer to say that you have the ability or the potential to be successful in this product management role, right? So if you don't have a degree, the way to think about it is what else can you do to show that signal, right? That becomes the question that one should ask, right? And there, unfortunately, people feel that if I've just done a course in product management, that's enough. What is a course? A course is knowledge, right? A course just tells you that you have an interest in that field and you have acquired some knowledge. It doesn't give you the signal of skills, right? So I would almost say that I very much think it's possible. I disagree that it's not possible, but the person needs to then work on an alternative way to signal those skills. And what I've seen work is nothing better than showing projects, right? Nothing better than showing work where you have demonstrated these critical product management skills and say, listen, I have these skills A, B, C, D, E. And here is the proof of these skills in this project 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so I am a good fit for your company on this product. Most people aren't able to make that connection with the skills and the story and the role. And you just by doing a course is not a strong enough signal to substitute something like a degree, right? So I think that's how I would look at it. I very much think it's possible. Like if you have a background in humanities, then you're already coming prepared with some knowledge on the behavior side of the skills that a product manager needs, right? The user centricity side, the psychology side, and so on and so on. You could always leverage those, right? And say, I have those, but there are 2, 3 other skills that I need. If I don't have a degree, can I at least get an opportunity to work on some projects on that and showcase that I have that and then sort of make that jump?
And I'll just add here, and just a couple of things that I wanted to add. And this is something, a lot of people who join the accelerated management program also sort of come and say, hey, I've done this. If I do this, will I be able to immediately switch to project management? And it's not that easy, for the simple reason that perhaps one of the best ways, if you are working in an edtech organization, perhaps you should request if you can do a lateral transfer, as in within your organization, if they can take a chance on you and you can pick up some project within your organization which is related to a product role, where you are then able to sort of, at some point later in the next 6 or 8 months, actually showcase or add that project, like Nikhil is saying, into your resume. I think the second thing is, if you understand from how Nikhil had defined and identified, every PM role is not necessarily for every person. So perhaps the roles that you're currently searching for or are looking at LinkedIn are probably tech-related PM roles. So perhaps the reading of the JD, understanding why they're asking for a computer science background or something is also important. Anything here you'd like to add, Nikhil? Any other suggestion?
So let me just share my screen again, at least on the skills, right? Like the 12 skills that are extremely critical for being a successful product manager, right? Like, so if you look at this is under 4 categories, right? Product execution, which is probably the technical side of, like, have you worked on a product before, right? Like that's what the technical part of a PM is. Customer insight, you don't need a technical part for customer insight, right? You can demonstrate your ability to have the skills on data, voice of customer, user experience without having any product management. I did it by being a teacher, right? By being a teacher, I could build my customer insight skills, right? Product strategy again is okay, you may have to say that, okay, this is probably something you may have had to have some experience in a product function, but look at influencing people. You don't need to have a product background for influencing people, right? You can say that I influence people in so many different projects or so many other domains and showcase those skills. So I would almost think about breaking down a product management sort of success into these skills, also knowing that no product manager, nobody literally has expertise in all these skills, right? That's why it's a cross-functional team that works together. So if you can identify which is the 1 or 2 categories that you can focus on and demonstrate that, that's good enough for somebody to say that, listen, I'll take a bet on you, and you have the opportunity of learning the other things, or you'll bring somebody from a different background to that team.
And I think that's really what we also do at the AMP. Really, we've gotten someone who teaches product management, who has sort of is not an academic, is someone, a practitioner who sort of tells you how to figure this out for yourself, if that is the profession you really want to go into. I'll take one more question very quickly, Nikhil. This is Krishna. He wants to know, what is the role of a PM in business strategy?
Okay, so I think it's a very important role. And the reason I think it's an important role, and if you remember, I said that a product manager sits at the intersection of technology, customers, and business, right? So business is an important segment for a product manager to kind of leverage. Because why is that the case? Because if you look at the world today, then a lot of the way we consume products or look at products is through the digital technology medium, right? So going back to that idea of directing the technology becomes critical, which is where strategy comes from, right? So on one line, it's the idea of strategy, which is, what is the vision? What are the features I need to put together? How is the customer insight connected to, my roadmap and so on? So that's the strategy side. The business side definitely is, because how are you going to make money? And right, because most people today, like I said, we live in a world where we're making money through digital products. So an understanding of how to leverage a product to actually run a business is a very important skill, right? So I do think a product manager plays a very big role in business strategy. In fact, if you look at a lot of the product management functions, at least at the earlier stage, they report directly to the CEO. Right? Only later on do you have a head of product that comes in and becomes a full-fledged organization. But most sort of early product managers in an early stage company report directly to the CEO, right? And so that fusion between business and a product person is definitely important.
So just quickly, 2 more questions, Nikhil. I'll take the second one first, which says, what are your observations of product management across various sectors, from edtech, fintech, biotech? Are there any differences? If your industry changes, does your role change? I think you already said it does, but maybe you could elaborate. And how does a product manager, prepare to jump between sectors?
Yeah, so I think there are 2 parts to this, right? I think so one is the skills part of the product management function, right? And the skills needed to be a innovation PM, which is 0 to 1. The skills needed to be a core PM, which is features. The skills needed to be a platform PM, which is more technology scaling. and the skills to be a growth PM are different. So, but it will come from the same set of those 12 skills, right? It's a mix of those 12 skills that get applied to each of these 4 functions, right? So that's one part of the story, which is your skills across any of these 4 verticals, right? Now, add to that your industry awareness or industry orientation, right? So having an industry orientation definitely helps. So for example, let me give you 2 examples, right? In one example, if you're switching between the same industry, it's easier to switch across these 4 different types of product because you have an industry orientation. So for example, if you work in an edtech company and you've done 0 to 1 product, it's easier for you to jump from 0 to 1 to, let's say, growth product in edtech. It's possible because you at least have an industry orientation, right? But if you're looking to jump across these different roles of PM in other industries, then it's easier to do it from function to function, to say, okay, I've done a growth role in edtech, then can I do a growth role in fintech? Or can I do a growth role in biotech? Or can I do a growth role in something? So the shift really happens more at the function level, right? If you're looking to do a shift across these functions in another industry, then you have to have a much better grounding on the industry, right? And again, that's something you have to I wouldn't say upskill, but get perspective of, and be able to build that for yourself, right? The nuances are different for sure. Like a product manager in biotech is slightly different than edtech, but those skills remain the same, right? The context may change, but the skills remain the same. So it depends whether you have, like, if you're jumping within the same industry, then it's easier to jump across products, functions. But if you're jumping cross industry, then it's easier to jump across, that functional line.
I just wanted to pick up the question that Krishna had asked once again, business and this thing. So just want to understand, between the 4 categories of product managers that you talked about, is there a specific category where this works better? Maybe is it when you're a growth product manager or when you're a scale and not when you're a tech? Is that also how it?
Yeah. So you're asking in what type of product manager is an industry switch possible? Is that the question?
No, I'm asking you, what Krishna had basically asked, where he had said, when do you need that financial acumen really? Where does that really work in business strategy? I mean, what is the role of a PM in business strategy? So I'm presuming every kind of PM will not have a role in business strategy, right? There would be maybe a PM who's more growth in the stage of growth orientation, or more a PM who's in the scale, in scaling. Is that how it works?
So, I mean, if you're going to force me to choose, which I think you are, and if it's in the context of, okay, do you really need like some massive business acumen in that sense, then I would say in the 0 to 1 piece, because the 0 to 1 sector is when you're almost launching a new business as part of that product, right? So having some sense of business strategy helps there. So that is definitely one place where it can help. The other place where it can help is on the growth side, right? Where you're again taking a working product across different geographies and segments and so on. Not necessarily so much on the feature side, where you've already identified what the problem is and you're improving the value of your product by adding new things. So there you don't need so much business strategy as much as, strong sort of product process systems, methods, working systems and so on, right? Thinking about features. And the platform side, it's more technology that you will need, right? So yeah, if you're forcing me to choose, then I would say in the 0 to 1 and in the growth side.
Obviously the innovation, basically, right?
Yeah, the innovation PM and the growth PM. That is today, by the way, that is all today. With AI, we're going to have completely different,
so nothing that we are talking today will stay true for the next, 6 months, or is it going to be at least a year before things start changing?
I think it'll take about 2 to 3 years, I think, right? And I have a theory on this, which we can speak about separately.
Next time. All right. One last question here, again from Anonymous, wants to know if certified product managers, I think he's probably naming a specific institution or something, does that work? I'm presuming it's the same person who wants to shift and doesn't have
So it helps, but is it enough? No, it helps, and I would almost encourage someone to do it. But is it enough? No, and think about it, right? It's actually a good, if you're enrolling in a certification program on product management, it means you're getting yourself into a space where you're getting knowledge, right? Now you need to complement that knowledge with skills, right? Because that knowledge is not going to be enough. So I would almost say that if you're investing time in building knowledge, at the same time, try and figure out projects where you can start applying that knowledge, right? And most people don't think of it like that. They think of it as I've gotten into a course and that's it. And the course will automatically help me get a job and so on, right? But course will help you with the knowledge, which is half the story. The second half is the projects. The challenge with projects is you kind of forget the knowledge later on, right? So a good time to work on projects is also the time when you're learning that knowledge in a certification program. That way you have both these signaling methods to change.
So one last final question. You are teaching at the AMP for the product course and some of the cohorts. So tell me, do you feel that the structure of this program helps people to maybe at some point get ready for a role in product management?
I think it definitely does, because this is one of the few programs which combine knowledge with practice, with that sense of projects, right? So when you kind of finish this, then you will have the ability to signal, which again goes back to the value of all of these programs, is a signal to say that, yes, I have learned these concepts, which is great. Employer says that's good to have, but where have you applied it, right? So the kind of case studies that you will have the opportunity of doing will definitely signal that, yes, you have an interest and you have an ability to be able to make that entry into that role if you aren't already in that.
All right. I don't think there's any other question right now, but thank you so much. Do reach out to us if you have any other questions. The Accelerated Management Program is recruiting for its 4th cohort, and Nikhil will be teaching and, of course, giving you lots of projects to do in that. So look forward to more interaction. And yeah, I think, Nikhil, we should quickly set up the PM in the age of AI, and this time do come prepared. One slide won't do. Let's talk in
this slide, by the way, but you never let me show my slides, but okay.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday evening. Look forward to staying connected with you.
Thanks, Seema. Thanks, everyone.